where this fantasy idea of a witch and the brave knight came from. Maybe Giovanni,
Yep.
which is our writer, remembers that.
Yeah, and exactly the idea went on a trip to the mountains with my brother and was one of the ideas, but it was not the main idea because we went through 3 or 4 different ideas and backgrounds for the story, and this is just the final version, if you remember.
Yes, I mean, there was something that had to do with space invaders, something that had to do with cooking recipes and rats in pies, if I remember correctly.
Exactly. Sergio, ci stai seguendo un po', Sergio? Ok.
Yes, no. I understand English. I'm just not used to talk so much, so it's better that Andrea helped me with the translation.
Okay.
Which takes us to the one step, not beyond, but backward. What we wanted, what CECAM wanted really to say, to tell other people not working in science, not really into this kind of very specialized and abstract thing, which is computation and simulation, high PC, high performance computation and simulation today. What topic was actually to be addressed, in your opinion, in the very beginning, and why? This is a question for Ignacio maybe and Sara together.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely is for us. I think we, again, this is an adventure and an experience for us to decide to address the big or the wide public, because as you say, I mean, we don't have an equipment that you can report on. There is nothing physical on which you can build. It's something that is more conceptual. We use machines, but at the end, the machines is just the tool. So the idea was how to convey this message of what are modeling and simulations and why they are useful, no? And then the fact that you need this infrastructure to calculate, to be able to do calculations. This is basically takes place in the framework of this project CECAM, which is about developing software, scientific software for that can exploit the new HPC environment. No? So finding the balance between these two. And I remember at the beginning we had a few very open and to some extent wild discussions about what, I mean, trying to clarify or have a common language of what is a model and what is simulation and how does it work. Yeah? So I think that was, to me, that was the challenge compared to, I mean, for us to be able to convey that message.
Oh, one more step backward, and this one I think is for Sara. Why we all did end working with this comics and science concept, which is already in place and working since well, a few years before we got in touch trying to use this concept for CECAM. What was so appealing to you?
So it was a combination of things. First of all, I heard about Comics and Science during one of my visits to the CNR Institute that Roberto directs. And of course, I heard of his involvement with this way of disseminating science to a broad public. In fact, I remember very well our first conversation in which I was surprised and captured by his enthusiasm, the examples that he was showing, the posters that he has in his office. So it was a discovery and a full immersion in a world that I had not previously associated with ways to talk about science, not too much in any ways. And so that was a very nice introduction to the whole idea. And as Ignacio was saying, we were looking for ways to communicate our work in CECAM and in CECAM. CECAM is the European project. CECAM is the institute that coordinates this project. And we thought that this would be a new and funny way to do it. An adventure, as Ignacio said, because then of course we were immediately confronted with the fact that we had no idea how to go about it. And then here we really have to thank you, Roberto, Giovanni, first of all, for his patience in putting up with us when we were trying to explain what simulation and modeling are, and then Sergio for embodying the ideas and the story so nicely. But the drive was really, we were looking for an innovative, funny way for us to communicate ideas behind a scientific project. And when we saw this meme, we were ready to jump on it.
Well,
I don't know if Roberto has memories of that first meeting.
Yeah, maybe I can add something. It says that you were asking for something we were looking for before you, in the sense that we started with Andrea to wondering what kind of medium. I mean, comics. It was quite natural because Andrea is a great expert in comics. But the problem to communicate science is a very big problem for all institutions. CNR, my institute, in particular, my institute is a mathematical institute. So we have this problem to give a representation of what we are doing to a general public, which audience which is not really aware of what we are doing, what is our work, our daily job when we go to the institute, even my children. And so when you start to say, I remember one of my children saying, oh, dad is just spending the time at the telephone. Okay, that's because it's very difficult to explain what a mathematician, a theoretical physicist and computational physicist is doing in his job. So this problem to communicate to the wide audience our contribution to science in the first place, what we are really doing and what's the tools we are using is difficult. And comics has this special quality to be so flexible, it's easy to adapt to different situations. And it's very difficult to do that with the books, and the people don't read books anyway, and young people in particular. And so, I mean, we started from a common ground. I mean, the problem posed by Sara was the same problem we were facing for many years. And so that's the reason why I transformed my office in a cave of comics and science, putting posters to attract people. That's, a strategy also, marketing strategy to attract people in this kind of network. So I remember very well.
Okay.
The next question is for our master artist, Sergio Ponchione.
Such a great responsibility to be called as a...
In Italian. Sergio, questo non era il tuo primo lavoro, li hai con noi, e quindi ormai cominci un po' ad abituarti a questa, che spesso è una difficoltà nell'entrare in argomenti che non fanno parte né della tua formazione né dei tuoi interessi. Sei ancora scioccato? Sei pentito? Com'è andata? Un pensiero così in generale. A very general question about how Sergio takes this thing of being involved in making comics about topics, and he basically don't know anything about in the first place, so he has to get into them somehow. Sergio.
Sì, il mio secondo lavoro, dopo quello fatto sull'Accademia degli elementi dotati del professor M. Quindi il primo argomento è stata la chimica. Questo invece mi ha provocato all'inizio un po' la stessa sensazione, che è quella, appunto, come dicevi tu, di straniamento, di essere un po' fuori sincrono con l'argomento e anche un pochettino intimorito. Poi mi hai subito tranquillizzato dicendomi che la chiave con cui tutto sarebbe stato risolto sarebbe stata una chiave in realtà molto accessibile a tutti, a me in primo luogo. Mi hai detto che il racconto sarebbe stato di taglio fantasy. Io sono subentrato poi nella seconda fase, se non di più, della lavorazione del soggetto, quindi di tutto l'insieme. E la cosa mi ha messo subito più a mio agio, ecco. Pentito assolutamente no, come anche per l'altro lavoro, è un'occasione di esplorare, di esplorazione in territori che non mi competono, in cui non mi sono mai addentrato se non a un livello prettamente scolastico, e quindi anzi è un appagamento, è un'avventura che mi ha dato molte soddisfazioni. In primo luogo per conoscere anche altre persone, quindi un confronto che prima assolutamente non avrei avuto, e quindi anche il frequentare ambienti, visite in luoghi. Purtroppo qua non c'è stata l'occasione di visitare il CECAM, come forse all'inizio era nelle intenzioni, ma è stato tutto comunque molto, molto entusiasmante. Spero che il lavoro che ho fatto trasmetta questa idea, insomma, questa sensazione che ho provato in prima persona.
Well, I was about to get back to Giovanni once more.
Perfect.
Because it was mentioning a few minutes ago about how it was a step-by-step process, an approximation process, the process he went through in order to find the right key to how can I say, to make a story out the concept of what approximation in science and in high-performing computing is. It wasn't easy because, as Roberto was pointing out too, in mathematics and in many branches of almost physical sciences, we are dealing with rather abstract concepts, which don't rely so easily on straightforward images. To try to put in images this kind of concept is not easy. Mm-hmm. What did you do, Giovanni?
The main you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The main advantage in using comics is that you have both text and images to describe and express things. And I think the only idea that survived through the entire process of thinking about what kind of story and of course the story, the writing of the dialogues, etc., was the fact that we had to use in some way the art of the comic to bring this process of approximation that is used at CECAM to simulate complex processes, and so to use to describe in images the level of detail that is used in successive, non so come in successive approssimazioni, non saprei come dire. And
following approximation.
So it was decided from the very beginning that we had to use different drawing styles from a style that is very minimal and very simple to more complex and detailed styles, and that was the base on which we started. Then the story went after. We had some ideas, like I said before, and the idea of Sara was this kind of recipe idea with in some way the idea was a guy or that has to reconstruct to redo a lost recipe, and in some way it helped with the witch idea. We had the cauldron, and from the cauldron come different images of that simulation, and those images are from the simplest one to the one that is more complex and more similar to the reality, because the entire issue was to show how you can simulate reality with different level of approximation until simulation and reality are so close that they become one in some way. So what you get in the simulation is what we will get in reality.
Roberto.
So I have two remarks, maybe for Giovanni or even for Sara, who was on the other side, I mean, in this process of elaboration. One is the fact that usually when we are trying to communicate mathematics, and in particular modeling, very often we make a mistake, which is we try to communicate the object of our research. I don't know, simulation for traffic flow, and I present the problem of traffic, not the tools in mathematics I'm using to solve the problem of traffic. So, so mathematics and modeling, simulation disappears, as usually, behind the real problem we are trying to solve. And so I found very smart from your side to try to avoid this kind of mistake, which is a mistake, a communicational mistake, because finally the real object of our work is completely hidden behind the application, the final application, which is for us is not so important, because usually we use the same tools to solve very different problems, from biology to traffic to other things and so on. So I mean, this first remark is very important. And the other part is the fact that in some sense it is in the common knowledge of mathematicians doing simulation. You speak about a cartoonish model. You can say that, okay, it's just a cartoon, it's not the real thing. But in practice, all the science is a cartoon. I mean, as already was understood by von Neumann, for instance, that the model is something which is simple and do something you need to understand the phenomena, but it is not the real things. But even before, Volterra produced some models where he stated the fact that it was not the real fact, but a simplification useful to try to discover some internal mechanism, to make some prediction. But you can change the model when the model is not enough to describe the new situation. So I mean, these two parts. The first one, that to focus on the real fact, and the other one, the fact that it is common knowledge, all people doing modeling, that models are not the reality, but it is not really what people see when we make presentation. When you do some presentation for even for colleagues, you focus on your results, not the techniques that you are using. So I found very smart, and maybe I appreciate some comments from you and Sara about these 2 points.
Ignacio, do you want to go first?
Well, I mean, I think I can only agree with you, because this is the core of our concern, of what we wanted to convey, and it was really I mean, I think it was a very instructive interaction to try, I mean, to find out a way to convey this message, and how to represent that in a comic. So in a support that can be easily accessible to people that are very far and from quite a varied range of ages. But again, that's what I mean, because we are, this is takes place within this European project, and because of CECAM is really an institution that is devoted to the development of algorithms and simulation in a wide variety of fields. We wanted to keep that broad view on what is actually the content of what we do, and why. I mean, that's the nature also of CECAM in substance. So finding out the way to go really to the substance of what we do, and then how to find the right language. I think that was really our effort. And I agree with you, it's not easy, because it's not just taking one problem and then building around it how this is modeled or made abstract, but it's the nature of the abstract process of thinking and the model development and how to develop it that was really our focus. Yeah. So I don't know, Sara, if you have additional.
No, yes, building on what you were saying, we also, and in this, the interactions and the discussions with Giovanni first, and then looking at the drawings by Sergio, and then discussing with Andrea, who has been our Virgil in this journey here, was extremely useful, because it wasn't easy to isolate. I mean, because there are, for all of us, what we do has many, many aspects. And so avoiding the temptation to try to say too much and therefore confusing the message, isolating something that could resonate, maybe not just with specialists, right? Because the process that we are describing, I think, is very common to a lot of different human activities. It's not just scientists who work in this way. And we also, so this successive level of abstraction, the fact that simple models still contain information. I think you will see that in each one of the level of drawings, we always learn something that takes us one step closer to finding a good way to tackle the specific challenge that the night has to challenge. The fact that things can go wrong, there are accidents along the way, and we wanted to convey the message that scientific process is not linear, not necessarily, in spite of the mythology of the apple falling on Newton's head and he immediately writing down the law of gravitation. And then the science is surprising, and this is another aspect that we try to put in the story. So I think a bit in the spirit of the way this story was constructed, there are many levels of interpretation of what we have done, and hopefully some of them will reach some different people. I mean, it's
if I may, we didn't talk about our starting point. It was this one. Well, this. I don't know in English how do you say it, la sensata esperienza di Galileo.
Yes.
Educated experience.
Educated.
Sensible.
Okay.
From Galileo, and
or informed.
You Yeah, Sara, you can explain that much better than me because you explained to me in the first place.
So now I have a huge responsibility set. The basic idea is that in order for us to be able to interpret experience, we need to isolate the, how can I say, fundamental ingredients of the things that we're looking at. And so if you have to model a very complicated object, a knight fighting a dragon, try to start by understanding what are the basic and most important characteristics of the knight and of the dragon that you want to interpret. Not only that, but you can, if you just do an experiment, if you just look at things, then you will be flooded by too much information. Try to construct an experience or an experiment in which you filter out all that it is not necessary. Put some sense in your way to observe nature. And then that's a way to gain some understanding, an approximate, imperfect understanding that then you will try to refine. Is that close enough, Roberto? I'm not sure if you...
No, I mean, no, that's okay.
No, go.
I mean, clearly that's there is a shift, in my opinion, in the philosophy of science from Galileo to the 20th century, because okay, the experience is very important at the beginning, the informed, educated experience. But then the idea of model, it was not in Galileo.
No, of course.
In the sense that Galileo believed that the universe is a Platonic universe made by mathematics. So that's the book of a universe is written in mathematical characters. But I mean, the real shift is in the last, in the previous century, when people realized that we have the different degree of approximation. This kind of even, I mean, the Popper philosophy is very important also to understand that you have not the truth, you have something which is not wrong, not yet wrong. So I mean, this shift of point of view is very important for me, and also for mathematics, because we are no more, in particular applied mathematics, we are no more trying to discover the internal laws of the reality, but something which is actually working. So I mean, maybe it's important to understand this. And I think that in your comics, this idea of receipt, which is in some sense the shift. Before we have a magic formula, which is true because it is, but now you enter in cooking, in which you have to add some spices to improve your some ingredients to improve your recipe. So, I mean, this shift with some magic inside, I think it's very interesting.
I would have a question, one more question for Sergio in the strictly artistic comic related side, because this is for our international audience. Sergio's been drawing what is apparently a very light fairy tale-like story with dragons, knights, and princesses, of course. But I'm sure you have seen very clearly how there is a certain degree of sophistication in his graphic style. And Sergio has been published in several countries abroad, outside of Italy, and with stories which are considered today a deep reflection on what comics are and how and why comics can tell and say things the way they do. And I will ask Sergio a specific question about this. Sergio, tu hai un retaggio, diciamo, per cui sei noto particolarmente in Italia, di grande cultore dei classici, dei padri fondatori, diciamo, del linguaggio del fumetto moderno. Hai fatto dei libri su questo, hai fatto dei metafumetti, fumetti che riflettono, parlando degli autori, su cosa i fumetti sono e perché i fumetti funzionano in quel modo. Provando a fare un po' una sintesi, secondo me, in parte questo si vede anche ovviamente nel tuo stile grafico, che per gli standard italiani è molto originale e al tempo stesso ci sono dei richiami ai tuoi modelli, Wally Wood, di cui hai parlato nelle tue storie, Wally Wood, Jack Kirby, Will Eisner. Una tua considerazione su questo, su come in storie così apparentemente leggere, perché a livello superficiale ovviamente è una favoletta con draghi, principesse e cavalieri, però un certo modo di fare i fumetti che tu hai sempre avuto può rientrare, diciamo.
Ma sì, in questo caso specifico ho disegnato molto pensando un po', visto il tono generale della storia, al taglio dei racconti di Mad Magazine, che è una rivista di fumetti storica americana, su cui sono apparsi lavori di alcuni autori che tu hai citato, come Wally Wood e altri. Quindi un taglio piuttosto ironico che si sposava bene con il soggetto generale della storia. Però, come dici tu, poi cerco sempre di aggiungere del mio alla materia che mi viene data, anche perché è un modo che ho per divertirmi, quindi per arricchire, per far sentire la mia voce. Qui ho giocato un po', diciamo, con l'impaginazione sicuramente, e questa cosa dei vari livelli di definizione delle simulazioni mi ha dato proprio l'opportunità per giocare sia con lo stile, quindi come diceva Giovanni prima, partendo da uno stile molto semplice per i livelli base, fino ad arrivare a uno stile più dettagliato per quelli finali. E lì ho giocato proprio un po' col mio stile, cioè mettendo il minimo dei dettagli all'inizio, poi crescendo e arricchendo, andando avanti. E poi nell'impaginazione con il calderone, il fumo, insomma, cercando di raccontare, come dicevi tu, un po' in un linguaggio da metafumetto, cosa succede nella storia tramite gli elementi che la compongono. Quindi il fumo stesso diventa una vetrina in cui poi appaiono le varie scene. E come ho fatto altre volte, appunto, nei miei lavori, cerco sempre di andare un po' oltre quello che mi viene dato come punto di partenza. Ecco. Ho bisogno sempre di andare un po' in profondità, quindi aggiungere ancora a una materia già molto profonda come questa, però aggiungere una mia piccola voce da autore grafico, quindi da disegnatore. È un racconto che mi ha dato molte possibilità questo, perché mi ha consentito molto di giocare con la forma. È una cosa in cui io sguazzo, mi piace la forma delle cose come vengono raccontate, è una parte importante del contenuto. L'importante è che sia bilanciata anche poi dall'altra materia narrativa, non sia semplicemente un esercizio di stile, ma sia proprio una cosa che vada a braccetto con un buon soggetto, con una sceneggiatura. Insomma, si deve creare un unicum di ingredienti che portano poi a un risultato, si spera, ottimale. In questo caso gli ingredienti poi erano anche bizzarri, essendo una strega, avendo un calderone, ci ha messo di tutto, quindi si sposava anche bene come metafora.
I mostrini, non so se ricordi.
I like your monsters.
Thank you very much.
Me too. I agree. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very
funny.
personal touch.
In the writing, I just said, just add the monsters.
Mostrini, Little Monsters is the Italian nickname. All these monsters went about when we discussed the thing. Ma Sergio, ci hai messo i tuoi mostrini?
Sì. Qualcosina, sì, vabbè, non mi sono lasciato andare più alle cose mie più oblique, un po' più strane, però insomma c'è già delle comparsate piccole ci sono, direi, nelle scene intorno alla strega nel calderone, insomma, con più magari una chiave un po' più ancora umoristica, meno inquietante del solito, ecco, io magari a volte tendo ad essere ancora un po' più destabilizzante, ma tutto va... può essere interessante ad ogni livello, ecco, basta solo dosare le cose nel giusto modo.
Certo.
Non sono soddisfatto del quesito che mi hai posto in generale. Però.
Assolutamente. Grazie, Sergio.
And Sergio, was it your first dragon in your life?
Probably yes, probabilmente è uno dei miei primi draghi, non frequento molto il fantasy, quindi devo dire che forse sì, può essere. Se aveste chiesto dei altri mostri magari sì, ma ne avrei già disegnati, questo è possibile che sia il primo. Mi sembra venuto abbastanza bene, quindi insomma, mi sembra riuscito
Especially
nel...
you got to the end product by successive approximations. That's important.
Starting from simple geometrical things and growing up in more complex, yes.
The square approximation to the dragon, yes.
Yeah. But in fact, maybe I've seen many people drawing live during these months because we had this kind of meetings, virtual meetings, and so I could appreciate the technique of many drawers. And I found that very often you start from a sketch, which is very similar to what you did in this case. You have some triangle, some circle, and then you develop a final drawing. So that's, I mean,
le forme basiche, diciamo, più geometriche elementari che delimitano lo spazio in cui poi verrà costruito l'interno. Quindi, ma nella scultura è uguale, uno prende un pezzo di argilla che non ha forma, informe, e poi togliendo, screzzando qua e là, comincia a plasmare, a dare procedimenti. Io lavoro sempre per parallelismi con altre forme artistiche, quindi anche la musica, la scultura o la pittura, e trovo sia sempre utile per capire come fare certe cose e analizzare come vengono affrontate in altri ambiti. Una cosa che mi ha sempre molto arricchito. Ecco.
And in fact, the word model in many languages means both the model for figurative arts and the model in the sense of science.
Okay.
So I mean, this kind of also in the sense of fashion. So we have many many meanings of this word.
Non-figurative arts are the same. When you write a book, you always begin from a scheme and a very drafty story, and then you add ingredients to the core.
Yes, of course.
Sara, right before we started this conversation, you were telling us how you already were getting feedbacks about this story. Positive ones, I suppose. I hope.
So yes, I had so much fun in the process of creating the story that I kept talking about it with my friends and family. So people have had to put up with me for a few months now on this. But there was one very young friend, a 9-year-old boy who lives in England, I'm sorry. He's the son of a very dear friend of mine, who was very eager to get a first copy of these comics. And so when we had a first complete draft, I sent it to him for a critique. And then I got a phone call, and he was using FaceTime, so I could see him, and he was sort of jumping up and down on his bed, telling me very excitedly how much he had loved the story, the witch, the knight, the little monsters, where he really liked the little monsters. So I think our first reader was very happy with what we did.
One of the best satisfaction an artist can get.
I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, what's the target age of your kind of, public awareness meetings you are going to organize? I mean, what's the focus of your project?
Well, I think that that's something that was part of our discussion, and also that was also part of the discussion when thinking about the story. I mean, Giovanni were referring the different stories that we were discussing. Our aim is to be able to reach quite a broad audience, and we were thinking starting in teenagers and younger people preferentially, with very few or not close contact to science. That was our target, and I also had a weight in the final choice, for good or bad, of the story. Yeah. So in a way, as I said at the beginning, we wanted really to try to address audiences that we do not address otherwise, and that are not, I mean, that are really far from more directed events that can normally, I mean, that one could organize for a big public. So the idea is that this can be reached to people who will go to a comic fair, or who can just get it through, I mean, through the internet. So really being as open and wide as possible.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's the same problem Andrea and myself we address during the years, because okay, you have people who are interested in science, they read books, they see I don't know documentaries and so on, so they have no need for our kind of action. But once you have to address a new target, maybe okay, there's a too general audience is impossible to be addressed, because if you want to address, I don't know, people 70 years old and 15 years old, is impossible. So you have to make a choice, and this choice, in this case, the young adult, or I mean, the children in secondary school, more or less, is quite interesting, because that's an age where people are trying to develop a taste for new things, for they are developing their knowledge, and maybe they can be involved in this kind of stuff, because the nerd generation, in some sense, has a more exponent in this layer of age between, I don't know, 13 and 25, maybe, and that's a very interesting target for this kind of action.
Well, that's why we thought, no, that this sort of comic format could be attractive for this type of audience. And again, even if these are people exposed to nowadays to computers, and they hear about science and so on, the nature of modeling and computation, I don't think it's something that they are easily exposed to, no? And that was also part of our goal.
Yeah, correct. Because people, they when they think about, I don't know, computer science, engineering, and so on, you are more concerned with programming, or I don't know, realize hardware and so on. But what is modeling now, which is very important, is 90% of an industrial project, for instance, so even more. People don't understand. I remember that I was in touch with people working in a project for cars, for a race, so the high level technology. One of them told me that 20 years ago it was 90% on the road in the race, and just 10% in computer. Now that's the opposite. So even for something people are used to think is really engineering, so you are trying to design the optimal behavior of a car or airplane and so on. Finally, now simulation is the most of the work. I mean, 95% of the work is in simulation. The money are there. So I mean, it's quite interesting to explain to a large audience that there is a change in our paradigm.
Yeah. Indeed. I mean, we are a highly digital society, especially for the young people, but they are not aware of how it really works. Yeah.
Yeah.
How it has changed. Indeed, how we do engineering or develop projects. So.
Yeah.
Is there anything anyone wants specifically to add to our discussion before wrapping things up?
There is a thing that I wanted to point out because it's one thing that I noticed during the process of making this comic, and that is what Ignacio was saying just now. We live in a world where we can simulate a lot of things, and that was not possible in the past. But I never heard pointing out that this is a great achievement for us, because if we don't have to test everything on the reality, it's a great risparmio. I don't know the term in English. Risparmio.
It's very economical.
Yes, but in terms of materials, but also in terms of lives, because you don't
economical have to, in a very broad sense.
Yeah, in a very broad sense of resources, lives, and a lot of things. You just have to spend energy for those big computers, but you don't have to ruin things or endanger lives or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, in making other comics with Comics&Science, and hearing by myself or reading, the road of science is full of victims, you know.
Yeah.
And now we have the means of avoiding that, and that's
quite
good
true. Quite true.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
Sara, so now we found ourselves in the finishing rush. We are about to putting together some more materials, and then this ECAM issue of Comics&Science with, once upon a time, I would say, would hit the stands. It's going to hit the net, because it will be, I think, digitally available on the net.
So yes,
Is it right?
That is absolutely right. The thing that we are planning on doing is to publish it on the ECAM project website, for sure. There will probably also be some space dedicated to it on the CECAM website. We will have a few hard copies, but these will be very precious for us, of course. And no, I mean, it's important once we finalize this work to have it ready and available for the broadest possible community. So this is the point of this. And then we'll see. I mean, hopefully we will be able to go around and present it in schools and discuss it with people, because this is also for us, it's a wonderful new toy that we can try to use to get in touch with people who would not normally be within our community. As Ignacio was saying, this was the whole idea. So yes, we will.
We will be having talks about this.
Hopefully,
it's very interesting.
Hopefully, yeah.
Absolutely. A toy is a very serious and interesting thing.
This is something that I am sure you have learned in your interactions with scientists, but we use words like toys, fun, in very, very serious ways.
That's all science and research is about, in a way. Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Sara.
Well, I think from my side, thank you very much. Thank you all for this. This was a lot of fun to do together. and very, very instructive. So thanks very much. Ignacio, maybe you want to...
I join you. I think it, as we have expressed in this dialogue, I think this has been an adventure, a very interesting adventure for us to understand, because it's the first time we tried to do this. And I think we have learned a lot, and it has always been a very constructive atmosphere. And I will always remember these very nice discussions that we were having at the beginning to try to talk and to everybody to understand what we wanted to do and all our doubts. I mean, I remember, again, when we were talking about what is our targeted audience, what is the nice story. I mean, again, we haven't done this before. So would be a story on a night of any interest to a teenager nowadays. I mean, these are, and once you start, what is the right, I mean, now once we decided the story has its own life, no? So then also for us was to understand what was the story entering it, and then how the message could be conveyed. So no, I think it has been a very nice and interesting experience, and we will keep on building on it. Yeah, that's for sure.
I hope so. If I may, I mean, one thing that was beautiful for me was also to understand how much skill and intelligence is hidden behind things that in the end aspire of being simple or appearing simple. That was something that was, I mean, it's clearly something that we aspire to as scientists, because there is beauty in a simple explanation. But it was great to find what it felt to me as exactly the same type of work in what Giovanni was doing, in what Sergio was doing. That was yeah, very, very nice.
Okay. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.